So, Devina, I think we should begin now because it is 8. I will give an introduction and then we will go ahead, right?
Yeah, sure. Yes.
So, welcome to the fifth session of the Young Folklorist lecture series. For those who are joining us for the first time, let me inform you that this series aims to build a platform that can bring together those early career researchers who have explored some aspects of folklore, folk performances, and folk life as a part of their PhDs. We invite them to share with us, especially young researchers, experiences of their fieldwork and the joys and woes of their doctoral journeys. Tonight, we are delighted to have among us Dr. Devina Krishna, who is an assistant professor at the Department of English, Patna Women's College. She has a PhD in linguistics from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Her research interests revolve around phonetics, phonology, and language documentation, among others. She presented her research on lexical tones in Western Indo-Aryan languages at South Asian Language Analysis Roundtable 35 at the National Institute of Oriental Languages and Civilization in Paris. She has also been a frequent guest speaker at various international symposiums and language festivals. She will deliver a lecture on the musicality and rhythm in narrative techniques within Dogra folktales tonight. She will demonstrate how Dogri storytellers infuse rhythm and elements of musicality into their narratives to provoke emotions in their listeners. Now over to you, Devinadi.
Thank you, Spandita, for a warm introduction. That's very kind of you. So I'll straight away present my slide. Spandita, you have to tell me, is it visible?
It is visible, yes.
All right. Okay, thank you so much once again. I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to present this topic in front of all of your young researchers. And I think I would be very happy to share my experience and whatever knowledge I have, acclaimed in this, few years back. So while as you can see, I'm going to talk about Dogri folk tales. So Dogri is my mother's mother tongue, and I already during my MPhil period and my PhD period, I worked on Dogri language. So though I was working on other aspects, other paralinguistic aspects such as stress and intonation, tone, of course. But yes, apart from that, I thought of working in this area also, in the area of Dogri folktales. So the topic of today's presentation is analyzing musicality and rhythm in narrative techniques within Dogri folktales. So these are the key elements of the presentation. As you can see, I'll introduce the term folklore in front of you because it's a very it's an umbrella term. It comprises of many aspects. And then I'll also shed light on Dogri literature for those of you who are still not aware about how this how rich this literature is. I would like to talk about that. And then also the interplay of linguistics and musicology as far as the Dogri folk tales are concerned. I would also like to discuss some very popular folk tales in Dogri, which are still being, narrated in the present day context also, and how the element of musicality and rhythm are intertwined as far as the narrative techniques of Dogri folk tales are concerned, with a conclusion. So overall, this is how the outline has been made. All right, so let me first talk about what folklore is. Okay, and as you can see on the screen, folklore is a product of humanity's artistic endeavors. Now, as we know that folklore, it's a creation of humanity's artistic endeavors. And when we talk about folklore, it denotes all olden myths, legends, folk tales, ballads, proverbs, fables, fairy tales, riddles, and superstitions. So it actually, it allows children to learn a wide variety of rich literary and cultural heritage and develop a sense of moral behavior to stand truthful, fair, and honest in society. This is something we already know, and these folk tales have been captivating us, for centuries. So this whole concept of folk tales, okay, this was actually inspired by Grimm brothers, whose first collection of fairy tales was published in 1812. And scholars all over Europe began recording and publishing the oral literature of many genres. Then the term folklore was coined by William J. Toms in 1846. When defining this term, Toms drew a clear distinction between the concept of the lore, defined as the content of the folklore, and the concept of the folk, who are the people who produce the lore. So folklore remains a part of every society, and it has played an indispensable role, whether it is somebody's childhood, or whether it's the family domain, or whether it's the speech communities for centuries. It remains a very important part of human culture and is marked by many myths and countless stories. It is people and communities who create and grow folklore. So it is an account of culture that is informally passed from one individual to another, either through verbal instruction or demonstration. Now, let me also talk a little bit about the oral traditions, non-verbal modes, and composite performing arts, which are an indispensable form of verbal folklore and are prominent in most communities, from large cities to remote corners of small villages and towns. While written folk tales are popular, oral traditions, of which folklore is an important part, have more sentimental value to people and communities. Therefore, the non-literate citizens of a region are important recipients of folklore traditions. So as far as our country is concerned, India is concerned, so we can see, a rich tapestry, of this oral tradition marked by folklore comprising folk tales, fables, lullabies, songs, and rhymes. And in the historical context, or let's say the early existing literature, when we talk about Panchtantra and Hitopadesh, they contribute an important dimension to the rich Indian narrative tradition. So folktales generally end with a moral lesson for the readers, and while not all folktales have this feature, these moral lessons are generally considered to be an important element of folklore. So these are poetic texts, in words of Ramanujan, who says that folk tales are poetic texts that carry cultural meaning and have also been referred to as traveling metaphors. So I think that these folktales have that, that ability to, to bring the communities together, because they allow for the transmission of cultural knowledge from the past to the future, thereby linking the old and new and strengthening ties. So obviously, these also produce a lot of captivating effects upon the reader, especially children for that matter. So as far as the transmission of knowledge is concerned, these are, these play a very important role. So these allow people to comprehend the general conditions of humanity, since they are sources of constructed insights, beliefs, fears, societal archetypes, and formal procedures. So the popularity enjoyed by folktales springs from the ingenious characters, the paranormal elements, the emphasis on action, the sense of justice, the happy endings, and the essential lessons they contain. Now, the current relevance of folktales in everyday life cannot be overlooked. These folktales entertain, of course, the entertainment factor is there. These also educate and also preserve culture. So these three things we have to keep in mind: entertain, educate, and preserve. So while some of today's children may consider folktales archaic or even irrelevant, the fact of the matter is that they continue to have influence in the modern times also, as a homegrown knowledge and insight found in folktales keep communities connected to their traditions and help shape cultures across the globe. Folktales continuously evolve according to the conditions and needs of the times. So let me just come to the next slide. So yes, of course, while we are discussing so much on the folk tales, the importance of folk tales, how these actually aid in bringing the communities together. So the next thing that I want to shed light on is the existence of Dogri literature, because I'll be discussing Dogri folk tales. And before that, I would just acquaint you with how Dogri oral literature, sounds like, or what exactly it consists of. So, Dogri has a very old tradition. I'm sure that you must be aware of this language. This is actually spoken in the Jammu region of Jammu and Kashmir between the Chenab and Ravi rivers, the western adjoining area of Himachal Pradesh, the districts of Gurdaspur and Hoshiarpur in northern Punjab, and Sialkot, Zafarwal, and Shakargarh in Pakistan. So basically, Dogri belongs to the Western Indo-Aryan language family. And of course, it has a rich oral literature, and it comprises of numerous folk songs, folk tales, riddles, proverbs, idioms, and more, which epitomize the various characteristics of Dogra life. So, of course, uh, when we talk about this language, we cannot ignore Amir Khusro, because Amir Khusro in Masnavi Nuh Sifir, the famous Hindi and Persian poet, he mentions Dogri in the list of prominent Indian languages. And numerous references to copper plates in ancient scripts, a plentiful amount of chronicles on royalty agreements, and a multitude of letters and title deeds written in Dogri in the Takri script established the use of this language for many centuries. The language has a rich and varied oral culture, and folktales form a substantial part of it. The rich legacy of Dogri language and literature received wide acclaim in literary circles due to Padma Sachdeva's collection of creative works. For years, grandmothers, mothers, aunts, sisters, and other Dogri storytellers have entertained and informally educated children by means of folktales. So these form an important part of Dogri folklore, and they are an essential genre of Dogri's traditional literature for children. So when we talk about Dogri folk tales, there is a multiplicity of themes. Okay, this language deals with multiplicity of themes that range from mythologies and mysteries to parables and humorous tales. And there are folk tales dealing with social and domestic issues, as well as problems related to local deities, saints, and places of pilgrimages. Nearly 2,000 folk tales have been collected and published by governmental and non governmental institutions. For example, the Jammu and Kashmir Academy of Art, Culture, and Languages has published 15 collections of Dogri folk tales, and some folk tales have also been individually published. Despite this, there are many folk tales that remain untouched by electronic and print media. So, to date, about 700 Dogri folk tales have been collected and published in approximately 20 collections. So, bibliography of Folklore of India lists only one book of Dogri folklore called Shadow and Sunlight, which is a selection of Dogri Pahari folk songs. Folktales from India contains 122 folktales from 22 Indian languages, with 6 tales from Punjabi and 5 from Kashmiri, the two languages bordering Dogri. However, uh, there is a shortage of Dogri in that list. But yes, Dogri folktales is a collection that propelled Dogri folktales into written literature. Now, let me just talk a bit about these folk tales that actually uh, these are tales of birds, thieves, barbers, and kings. Interestingly, and these tales are both thought provoking and instructive. So of course, these are provoking, and as that, and these educate also. Apart from the entertainment thing, these educate also. So these tales suit listeners of all age groups. So whether these are children or teenagers to young adults and the elderly, everybody can listen and learn a lot. Now, the various themes incorporated into folktales ranging from love and war to the supernatural and more are per se pervasive in Dogri literature. It is a fact that most of these tales teach the readers lessons about how to behave in the real world. And a few examples of Dogri folk tales are Creation of Man and Woman, Destiny of a Land, The Lucky One Punnu, The Clever Cripple, The Barber and the Rakshasa, An Honest Thief, Gungru Poi, I Lak Tunu Tunu, Raja, Ichnu Mishnu, Ingnu Mingnu, Pitrukol, and Sonpari. Now, the narrative techniques of these Dogri folk tales are marked by musicality and rhythm. Yeah. Yes, so these folktales are marked by musicality and rhythm. Now, Dogri storytellers narrate the folktales which are mostly about kings and queens, brave hunters or clever animals, and they include moral warnings about lying, theft, greed, and more. It has been the tradition in the Dogra people to narrate or sing these stories to children and grandchildren. Now, there is this, you can see on the screen, this is a popular folktale entitled Kungru Poi Ai Lak Tunu Tunu. Now, this just reads as follows. So here I have just mentioned this very popular folktale, which is still, which people still narrate to children or even to people in general also, or whether it's a family setup or whatever is the scenario. One fine day, a judge sees that a bird has eaten the leaves of a plant from his land. He was infuriated and decided to punish the bird by taking it to the king for retribution, even though the bird was lame and unable to fly properly. On the way to the king, they encountered a man on a horse driven carriage. The carriage driver felt pity for the bird and told the judge that the bird was poor and helpless. The bird then said to the horse, Now, these are the lines. Okay, these are Dogri lines, and this is how the person who is narrating, the storyteller, actually infuses musicality and then narrates these lines. So I would just like to, though I am not a typical Dogri speaker, but I would like to try here. So it is like this. कोड़े आले आए टक टुनु टुनु सब्बे चिड़िया आइया टक टुनु टुनु लंबी चिड़ी पकड़ोई टक टुनु टुनु बच्चे मेरे आले टक टुनु टुनु धूप लगे सुख मन जागे टक टुनु टुनु ठंड लगे मर जमागे टक टुनु टुनु. Now what happens, this is how the storyteller actually in a rhythm following a certain musicology, certain musical pattern, narrate these lines in Dogri to the listeners. And similarly, there are so yes, of course, there's a lot of repetition also that is being involved. The story hasn't ended yet. This was just to tell you how it actually sounds and how this whole technique is being employed. So not only one popular folk tale, but I have come across quite many folk tales where this element of musicality and rhythm are playing an important role. And interestingly, initially they start narrating the story in Dogri, which is minusing any kind of musical element, but then certain at a certain instance, these two elements, the musicality and the rhythm, they are intertwined to create the effect. All right. So yes, so we say that the bird uttered those words in a sing-song way. Okay, but of course that's a sad story. And later on, what happens that like the bird is actually narrating the story to the king. The king listened to the story and then was very sympathetic to the bird and its plight. And then at the end of the story, there's a judge who punished the man, and the poor bird was allowed to go free. This is what how the good stories end. Okay, so of course the combination of the story. So there's a combination of the story and the song. Okay, that actually attracts the listeners. Okay, captivates the listeners. So the song is sung in between the story, but eventually becomes an integral part of it. So I have listened to the informants, I've listened to the storytellers, where they actually infuse these elements. So combining music with Dogri folktales, serves to excite the listeners, especially children, who soon become intimately involved with the tale. So the storyteller sings a song in the middle of the folktale, and children listening soon join in. The combination of the story with the song elicits empathy, thereby making the listeners use their hearts and not just their minds. The song helped to bring the stories to life, whether it be with joy or sorrow. So this is a very simple technique that is used by Dogri storytellers to tell a part of the story, sing a song, tell more of the story, and then sing another song. And this aids in weaving the song and the story together. So there's a weaving of song and the story together. This is not unique to Dogri, as any storyteller can insert songs into their stories. They would first need to find an appropriate story and then determine the best place in the story to insert the singing. Through simple repetition, the songs included in stories are often picked up by the audience without explicit instruction. These musical elements create experiences that are more powerful and meaningful than regular storytelling. So then we have this another popular story entitled Pigga Te Piggy. This is about birds. There's a lot of story dealing with birds, and children, they just love to, listen to these stories. So whether it's a grandmother narrating, or somebody elderly, or even people in the family, guardians, they actually narrate these stories. So there is a story which reads as follows. So there are two birds that live in a forest. The male bird used to visit a Jat's backyard for grain, which made the Jat angry. So the Jat caught the bird and put it in a cage, which the female bird saw and recited the following song. So again, the song element is there. So the bird sings like this. मैं आखदी सी थाकदी सी जटा दे बेरे ना जानिए मेरे पी गया. And then the bird, the male bird responds, मैं जीवना मैं जागना तू उठा करेगी जानिए मेरे पी गए. So again, there's a, it's very dialogic. Okay, the female bird is singing, and then the male bird is responding. But yes, the song element is again infused in between. So you can see that in between, the song element is being infused, which is actually rendering the musical element. And you can see that again, what happens is, like, the birds are singing to each other, and suddenly, the man comes and kills the male bird and put it on a plate, and again the female bird is singing and again repeating those lines. So repetition is another element that we actually see. So you can see the same lines, repetition is being there. So that is, actually creating an emphasis on the part of the storyteller, and something which is actually helping the listeners also to absorb the content. So there's a lot of repetition. I haven't mentioned on the slides, but yes, again, the story goes like this: that the female bird again sings the same lines, and then suddenly, the flesh of the male bird, which is dead, starts singing, and then again, what happens? The jar puts the bird in a container. Again, the female bird is repeating the lines, the male bird is repeating, and suddenly, what happens is, like, finally, due to some miracle, the male bird flees to the female bird's side, and then they both get reunited in the end. Okay, so yes, the person who had actually killed the male bird was actually watching their interactions and was consumed with jealousy and bitterness, and therefore he lost, and the male bird actually emerged as the winner in the end. So this is how, very simple, very simplistic stories have been designed. But yes, there is a way to actually, communicate these stories to the listeners. And so we can say that there's an infusion of repetition, rhythm, and musicality that can be heard in the lines. So as you can see, that those lines have been repeated again and again to create some emphasis. Similarly, there are other stories also. And yes, uh, as I have mentioned, that, the combination, again, I'm reiterating my point, the combination of the story and song serves to draw the listener in. So the song is sung in between the story, but eventually becomes an indispensable or integral part of it. So combining music with Dogri folktales serves to excite the listeners, and especially I mentioned this, that especially children, okay, because the moment they hear the these elements of musicality, they actually they become intimately involved with the tale. Otherwise, it goes very plain. And the best part is that still we can see, if we visit the Dogra regions, we can hear instances of people actually narrating the folk tales to the children around, or even to young people around, or if there's some gathering, some function, and they're like sitting together, so they are narrating stories. The I will agree that uh, we are actually losing. We have actually not only losing, but we have lost quite a great deal of this whole idea of the age of gold, the age of folk tales. But yes, still we can say that the age is still coming back. Okay, yeah. So, the storyteller sings the song in the middle of the folktale, and children listening soon join in. So, of course, as I said, that the technique is quite simple, very simplistic. To infuse a song, to repeat elements, and to insert the song at the right place within the story. So there's this simple repetition. Okay, there's simple repetition, and these elements actually create a very powerful effect. All right. So and then of course musicality and rhythm, these play very important roles in setting the tone and determining the storytelling techniques within these folk tales, because the ultimate goal is to generate emotional reactions, okay, of course, or to improve ideas also. So when we talk about these these categories of music, we cannot overlook or ignore rhythm, which is the essential ingredient. And in that, sounds can be mixed in a myriad of patterns, but if these sound patterns lack rhythm, it is not considered music. We know that it's an indispensable part of music. So rhythm is also important as far as these musical concepts are concerned. And any kind of storytelling which is effective, when we say the effective storytelling, has to be a rhythmic storytelling. So even if there are static images to be included in a story, rhythmic storytelling techniques can be applied to make these images engaging. So the idea is that you can just with certain elements, you can just make your entire content very engaging. So rhythm of course, as I mentioned here, has an enormous power, and when it is applied to storytelling, that can create a major impact on the story and of course the listeners also. I haven't mentioned here, but then yes, there has been other folk tales also, very interesting folk tales. And for example, there's a story entitled Raja De Chekan. That means a king having 6 ears, and it's a very popular folk tale. Well, I will just try to uh, tell you how the element of repetition works a lot. So I will just read the story. Very simple story. So there once lived a king with 6 ears, and the barber who used to cut the king's hair was only aware of the fact that he had 6 ears. However, this barber died, and the king had to use the services of another barber named Tanu. The king told Tanu that he has 6 ears and asked him not to tell anyone this information. Tanu could not believe this news, but did not tell anyone that the king had 6 ears. Eventually, the barber's stomach started swelling and he started experiencing a lot of pain. He tried many treatments, but no one could solve his problem. Somebody then asked him if he was keeping a secret, to which Tanu said that he had hidden the fact that the king has 6 ears, and asked if there was any treatment for this hoarding of secrets. The Baba was advised to share this information with a tree, which he did, curing him of his ailments. After some time, people came with a musical instrument, and that was a dhol, and he made dhol from the tree. They then went to the king and started playing the dhol. And there's this, again, the repetition element is there, which says that Raja de Chekan, Raja de Chekan, Raja de Chekan. Three times these words have been repeated. And then there's a question, Kunne sunaya, Kunne sunaya, Kunne sunaya. That means who said that? That the king has 3 ears. And the dhol replied, Tanunai. So it's the Tanu Barber. Okay, so the dhol, the musical instrument, is replying. So again, there's a lot of reiteration that we can see as far as the content is concerned, the content of the folktale. But you will see that such kinds of, whether it's repetition or musicality, they're occurring at intervals, certain intervals as far as these folk tales are concerned. So very sensibly, these elements have been inserted or structured within the folk tales. So the king was surprised and everybody was amazed. The king called the barber, who said that he was extremely sorry for disclosing the secret about the king's 6 ears, but said he did it because the secret was making him unwell. The king's advisors informed him that it was not the barber's fault, which the king considered over a long period of time. During this time of reflection, the king realized that everybody now knew that he had 6 years, but nothing had changed. The king was therefore content again, and the story ends. So, the moral of this story is that everybody is made equal, and it does not matter if someone has different features. So, you can see that these are very simplistic, regional folk tales, ending with some kind of, a moral, some kind of lesson for everybody to learn. But yes, very intelligently, very rightly, these elements of musicality, repetition, rhythm have been ingrained within the structural aspects. So, musicality and rhythm, of course, play an important role in determining the storytelling techniques as far as these folk tales are concerned, and of course the heightened speech patterns in the oral storytelling techniques, in that speech patterns are more rhythmic and the words are more clearly enunciated, especially during repeated phrases within the story. And when we talk about repetition, which is of course an important feature of traditional folk tales, given that repeating words and phrases is a common practice for storytellers. So when the same word or phrase is repeated 3 or more times during the telling of a story, the listeners are strongly impacted. So, of course, these storytelling, weapons have been, uh, ingrained within the stories so that the listeners are strongly impacted. Of course, these make a lot of impact upon the listeners. Otherwise, that will be a very basic storytelling. So, repetition is something that not only allows children to memorize familiar words and phrases, but also increases language skills and improves vocabulary. So these have a lot of plus sides also, and of course it's an important step in the process of learning how to read and developing a positive attitude towards books and literature. So as far as the storytelling is concerned, I think these actually, you know actually bring forward very positive effects if we really take these, into our daily routine and share share amongst the people around us. So that's really will help in developing a positive attitude towards literature and of course books also. So the element of musicality engages most of the senses. The more senses stimulated by a story, the more people will not only relate to the story but also be moved by it. However, the ultimate achievement of incorporating musicality is people recalling the message as one of their own, as compared to them simply repeating something that they heard. So, by incorporating musicality, the story's message can be internalized by listeners. Okay, so there's a need to incorporate this musicality. And I have already mentioned that music is, it's a therapy, right? It's a therapy. And music is, known for its mood altering qualities, and it has the ability to affect behaviors. Okay, it triggers human senses, and it greatly impacts humans' sensibilities, and it also provides, as far as the storytellers are concerned, opportunity to tell their stories in different ways. So, of course, this sounds very fascinating. How, still, as far as the Dogri folktale narration techniques are concerned, it is still used in Dogra culture today. I myself witness, whenever I move to such regions where Dogri is being spoken. So whether it's the state of Jammu, or whether it's certain parts of Himachal, I have visited for the data collection. I have listened to these folk tales. People still remember. People still narrate. There's a duality of musicality, rhythm ingrained within the structures, which is so interesting to know. And it really, strengthens our culture. Recently, I just read an article on the lost golden age of folk tales coming back. So there was this recent article, I think it got published just few months back. I was reading, and this was on the lost golden age of folk tales coming back. So there's this renowned Nigerian folklorist, Dr. Bukar Usman, and he said that in spite of the internet age, people are still nostalgic about folk tales. And he indicated that the golden age of folk tales we lost is coming back. So he just mentioned about Nigeria, because we know that, in the present context, there is, a lot of emphasis on English, and in some way or the other we are de-emphasizing local languages. So because of this whole issue of national integration, there's a lot of emphasis on English language. So he said that, in Nigeria, lots of languages are on the verge of extinction. But yes, still people are working to recreate and teach those languages that have died. There's a lot of effort as far as the preservation of languages are concerned. And UNESCO is really conscious of these languages, because UNESCO focuses on the importance of mother tongue, which is quite, which is of course one of the most important codes we must remember. And uh, and even to teach a child in his or her mother tongue is very, very important. So we are emphasizing on English, but and on the other hand, we are de-emphasizing local languages. But it's important that we must, preserve our culture. And if we actually, uh, if we, stick to uh, not only just one language, but we also preserve our languages by, the best form is to speak a language, to write a language, to write in a particular language. So if it's your mother tongue, please hold on to it. Because through this talk, I just don't want to, draw your attention to how, Dogri folktales, some of these folktales sound like. But then on the other hand, I also wish to draw your attention towards the serious issue of language endangerment, and how we as linguists or language enthusiasts are working in preservation of these languages, which are nearly dying, or some of them are in a very critical position. Some are critically endangered. Some are very vulnerable. Like I stay in the state of Bihar. I'm working here, and I can see that some of the local languages here, such as we have languages like Bajika, and we have Angika. So these are very vulnerable, because few of the population are actually speaking these languages. So language endangerment is an important issue, and I think together we can work on it. It's very simple. The thing is that we must hold on to our mother tongues. So even as far as these folk tales are concerned, if because we know that every culture has its own folk tales, and India it's multilingual. There's a rich culture. There's a rich tapestry of languages. So I think we as humans, we must, speak our mother tongues. And at the same time, let's learn as many languages. Why not be a polyglot, learning as many languages as we can? So in that way, we can, we can not only, you know, we can not only, preserve our languages, but yes, we will have something for the future generation as well to look forward to. So with this, I come to the end of the talk. I think, I hope that it made sense. So these are the references. These are some of the references which I consulted while I was working on this paper. And with this, I come to the end of the talk. Thank you so much for the patient listening.
You can stop video sharing. Right. Um, and thank you very much for this talk. It was very interesting. I personally did not know much about Dogri language or the Dogra ethnicity, but from your talk, I got a brief overview of how it is, and it will interest me to pursue my interest further. I have many questions in my mind, but I will open the floor first. And you can already see the chat box is flooding with messages. So you please address these questions first, and then we can um, ask um, the audience individually to
Yeah,
raise
I
their
think I need to share my slide because somebody has asked for the reference slide. So I'll just share it again. So I hope you can see the reference slide.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so you can have a look at it. Yeah, you have even asked for the name of the title of the story. So I mentioned the first story was actually Gunguru Poi Ai Lak Tunu Tunu. That was the first story. The second was Piggate Piggy, which was about the birds. And then I also mentioned about the third story. That was Raja De Che Kanna. Okay. So if you wish, I can send you. I can, I'll mail the copy of the PPT to Spandita, and she can mail to all of you in case just you wish to see the slide again. Is that okay, Spandita? I'll mail my PPT to you.
Yeah, that is fine. But then in that case, I need the email ID of those who are
Okay,
interested
okay,
to
okay,
see it.
okay, fine. Okay,
So,
fine.
those who are interested to get a
Otherwise,
the
yeah,
slide.
otherwise the this paper of mine is available on online also. It's available. So you can get the reference on Google Scholar. If you type my name, Devina Krishna, and you just type linguistics, so you can check this paper. It's available online, so you can read this paper also.
Right.
Is that okay? So here's the reference slide. So are there any questions? Okay, is there any translation version to English to read the Dogri folktales? Because I am from Assam, I don't have knowledge about Dogri folktales. Yes, there are a couple of works, which are the translated ones. So you can read that, and that will be very interesting. As I said, that there's something called Dogri folktales itself, and that's a collection of Dogri folktales that you can read. Okay, and of course, I talked about the bibliography of Folklore of India, which has collection of Dogri Pahari folk songs that can also be read. So yes, you can read that, of course.
Is there any other question? So the floor is open now. So please raise your questions or put it in the chat box.
Hi, ma'am. Uh,
Hello.
I'm Hi, ma'am. I'm Amrita, and it was very interesting to listen to you, and also you sing very well.
Thank
And
you.
I'm curious about to know more about rhythm. So my question is how to trace this rhythm technically, and how to give rhythmic dimension more clarity, and how to set boundaries in defining rhythm when we talk about so pliable area like rhythm and communities.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. So as you know that, so of course, you need to have some kind of perception about it, because we know that rhythm is an important element. Okay, rhythm is an important element of, you can say, of music. So while even, there's even if there's a song, there's a rhythmic pattern ingrained within it. So as we always, for example, intonation. Okay, so if we say any sentence in an intonation, so what happens? So there's even intonation. What happens and what is an intonation? There's a variation of pitch. Okay, and we need to have that kind of perception. So as a linguist, when we talk about the stress time language or the syllable time language, in syllable time language how it works. Okay, so again, there's some rhythmic pattern. Okay, within certain breaks. Okay, within certain breaks, there is some kind of emphasis. Okay, or let's say some prominence. So I think as a linguist, what happens, or as a somebody who is unearthing the rhythmic structures for the first time, it might not be very easy. But yes, I think with the time and expertise, it will actually uh, help you in determining the rhythmic patterns. And technically, of course, there are many things that work. So I think if you read little bit on suprasegmentals, for example, what happens when we actually try to do linguistic analysis, because I'm a linguist, so I'm all the time busy with unearthing the linguistic structures, right? So it is important that we also focus on the suprasegmental elements. Okay, so I would suggest you that you please try to read a bit on prosody, like what are the prosodic features a language may have. So read on stress, read on tone, read on intonation, read on melody, read on rhythm. So all these are intertwined. So that will help you. That will actually help you in determining these elements. Yeah.
Madam,
Yes.
yes. I have one question regarding Dogri folktales. So,
Yeah.
is there any musical patterns or the styles? So, is it any initiative regarding the any metadata to preserve or protect? Because in our constitutions already said that the Article 51A it shall be the duty of every citizen of India to value and preserve our cultural heritage.
Yeah.
So, I think. Lots of initiatives from different folk tales, folk forms. You also told that the UNESCO and also WIPO initiated different activities. So, is there any Dogri folk tales? It's a rich, I think, rich heritage.
Yeah.
So, any metadata initiatives from different perspective or different organizations or
Yeah.
different. So, is there any information in this regard, madam?
Yeah, actually, things are coming up. Things are coming up, and I'm also thinking myself also to currently I'm thinking that in future I'll try to annotate some of this data and preserve. So yes, we are planning. We There are lots of plans coming up, and let's hope that we actually come up with annotation and preservation of through corpus linguistics. We'll make this happen. So right now, organizations are working on certain mother tongues, as far as what you are talking about, the formation of metadata and all such stuff. But yes, typically, not on Dogri currently, but yes, I'm also planning to come up in future, because as you said that, UNESCO is also emphasizing a lot of mother tongues, and I think it is our duty to, especially we as linguists. So yes, I have plans, and for that, for all this is not very easy, but yes, I have plans that I will try to, create, some corpus as far as this language is concerned. Yes. All right. So, of
Thank
course,
you.
yeah, I think there are some questions in the chat box. So, okay, as you have mentioned, proverbs and idioms are part of the folklore. I'm curious, how do proverbs intertwine in folklore narratives, and can proverbs also be associated with rhythm, repetition and rhythm? So, of course, these are all part of folklore tradition, because, as I said, that folklore is a very heavy term. It's just not comprising of folk tales, but many aspects, many ingredients are there in the making of folklore. So, of course, proverbs are also an essential part of folklore narratives, and it just depends. Yeah, so if there is a folk tale and that involves certain kind of proverbs, of course, it just depends. So, but yes, for proverbs are an important ingredient of folklore, I should say. And well, as far as these repetition and rhythm is concerned, this is essentially part of the folk tales. Okay, so my emphasis is more on the folk tales as far as the repetition and rhythm is concerned. But yes, when you talk about proverbs, of course, they form a part of folklore. All right. So Divya has a question. Can you suggest some tips for researching on folk dance? Okay, that's interesting. So, see, I teach research methodology. And what is research? Research is actually, when you're adding something to already that is existing. Okay. It can be something very new. So, folk dance, see, you can take up research on any topic. So, whether you want to research on a folk song or a folk story, okay, whether it's a folk tale or it's a folk dance, that's okay. You can easily research on folk dance. So for that, you need to, the important thing in research is that you need to choose the kind of folk dance that you wish to focus on. So if you have a particular folk dance in your mind, you can collect some information related to that folk dance. And what aspects do you want to? If you think that the folk dance is not being used anymore, okay, it's vanishing. So you can just you can collect some data. You can, you know, uh, you can prepare a research work on, on the diminution aspects and making people aware. So any kind of research, if it is done with a good intent, an honest intent, a genuine intent, is worthy. So if yes, of course, you can research on folk dance. So you can choose the category of dance or the genre of dance, and you need to, of course, visit a particular place where that dance is being practiced, or that dance belongs to which speech community. You must visit that that community of dance, and then there you can gather information. So research is not an easy journey, it's a tough journey. But yes, you need to come up with, with your questionnaires, with your surveys, and then only you can make this possible. So you can choose a particular variety of dance, and you can collect information, and you can see whether that dance form is existing or not. And nowadays you're very privileged, because you can create a Google questionnaire, digital questionnaires, you can conduct surveys, you can have a video call, you can interact with the informants and get information. Yeah.
So, Professor Devina, I have several questions.
Oh
So
my
I will
God,
take
yes.
the privilege
You
of
can ask.
being a moderator, and I will ask some questions.
Yeah, please.
The intermingling of musicality and narratives that you spoke of is something, as far as I gathered from your talk, is part of Dogra everyday lives, right? So people sing this kind of songs and then narrate these stories to please to make happy some other members of their family. But then is there some I mean, is such practice also being professionalized like some other genres, some folk genres are being like? I mean, can we see some like staged version of the same thing? Like, is it just a part of everyday life, or this performance has also been professionalized? Like, is there some
Yeah,
professional story?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a very relevant question. Thank you, Spandita. So that's true that it's basically, if you see such a scenario of, narrating these folk tales, that's more like a, domestic sphere, because I've seen that whether it's a simple domestic setting, it's a simple family setting, so people are narrating the stories. But interestingly, recently I found that people are trying to stretch this to professional front also. Like recently, there was this Dogra site on Facebook, and I just read that the stories which I was actually these stories which was actually narrating. I could see the spread of those stories. Somebody had mentioned those stories, and they were like actually trying to promote those stories. So I think people are taking interest. I think even on theaters and all, there are performances taking place. So yes, that is taking place professionally also. But yes, that is very little. But yes, I think people are, they really wish to, preserve their culture. So they are taking initiatives. So yes, there are lots of initiatives going on. So whether it's a simple place of Jammu like Basoli, where my mother was being born. So it's a very simple, tehsil. So they have plays going on, and especially when there's some event, they perform also. So yeah, but it's true that these folktales, they actually occur more in a domestic setting, or as I told you, some family function that has taken place and people have gathered together. But yes, initiatives are being taken to spread that professionally also. Yeah.
Right, because if there is some appreciation for this kind of performances, then more people will be interested to preserve and take
Exactly.
it forward. So yeah, and
Exactly.
I have one more question. So that is,
Yeah.
you said like you in response to somebody's question, you said you also want to detect the supra segmental feature of the languages to detect the melody or the whether the patterns of melodies, things like that. Like, what kind of tools will you use for that?
Yeah. Yeah. So, like as I said, that we have speech software also, speech software, and I think most of you might be aware also, because you're students of linguistics and phonetics. So we have speech software like I have when I was collecting data on Dogri. Interestingly, and now I would like to share my field work experience. So I actually worked on the prosodic features, the supra-segmental elements, because interestingly, Dogri is a tonal language. So we always, claim as linguists that, Punjabi is tonal, and some languages in northeastern part of India, they are tonal in nature. They are tonal. So Dogri, while I, conducted my MPhil research, I found that Dogri is also tonal. And there had been early researchers also taking place in this area, but there was no scientific evidence to prove that Dogri was tonal. So I thought of working on this topic, and I collected data. I visited the regions of Jammu, lots of regions, parts of Himachal Pradesh where Dogri is being spoken. Of course, there was variation there are different categories of Dogri also. So in Himachal, there's a different variety. In Jammu, there's a different typical Dogri. So I could, collect data, and then I worked in a software called Prat, which is a speech software. So there that helped me in actually, alienating these different prosodic features. So whether it was just to find the stress of the language, or how does stress function, or what makes the language tonal. So if I could find three similar words, the same forms, But as you change the tone of the word, the meaning changes. That's what tonal languages actually, work like. So we have the most important, the prominent example of Mandarin Chinese, which is tonal in nature. So interestingly, the software helped me in actually, because I could see. So if there's a contour, there's a glide taking place from fall to rise. So interesting, the software could show me the glides, the different, contour patterns of the tones that actually helped me in, establishing the fact that Dogri has a tripartite tonal system. Three tones are there. And I was very glad that I could prove that. And so now we can say that not only Punjabi or some languages of the Northeast India, but of course Dogri is also tonal. And what makes a language tonal? Maybe sometimes what happens, there's a loss of segment, and that actually leads to the rising of a tone, or you can say generation of a tone. So there are different, factors that actually lead to the genesis of tones. So when we talk about suprasegmental, so of course there are software, speech software that can actually help in determining these suprasegmental elements, which is so interesting. I think we need to research a lot, and knowing the right intonation really helps a lot, because sometimes what happens, like we as Indians, we know that we fail at producing intonation, but it's as a language student, I always emphasize or tell my students that not only the linguistic elements, but even the paralinguistic elements are equally important. Yeah.
Right. Is there some other questions? We can still take it up.
Okay, you have already mentioned the site of my paper. That's already there. So yes, so you can read that, and you can always you can come up with your feedback. You can mail me your feedback, or if you have any queries, you can mail me. So that will be good.
Ma'am, it's one more question. Hello?
Yeah, Amruta, you are trying to say something, but then there is lots of noise on your part. So probably check.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, ma'am. That is from your experience. How should one go about collecting data from communities this mindfully? Like especially when they have the researchers have no musical background to claim, and what are the do's and don'ts to collect more reflexively? Thank you.
Yeah, so it's very challenging. See, the first thing is that any kind of research when you undertake is very challenging. Even I didn't have much idea about the topic on which I was working. I just started, working on the prosthetic features. Even I just couldn't produce the proper intonational pattern. I think it takes time. First of all, you need the patience as a researcher. You need to be an honest researcher. You prepare a questionnaire, always come up with a strategy, always have a methodology. Once your methodology and the way you need to collect your data, because your framework has to be, methodology is your framework, right? And the kind of data methods, research methods, I'll say, research methods that you're actually relying on should be clear to you. Okay, so you need to do some homework in advance. So even when I started working on these suprasegmental elements, I had no idea how to produce a contour tone. I could not. But yes, little sometimes the expertise of another person who is guiding you also helps. And then experience, as I said, is the best teacher. So you go, you face the community, you collect data, and I think with your perception and every interaction, things will be clearer. So always have the clear methodology as a researcher. And let me tell you that we always emphasize that you go and live with the speech community so that you can get the authentic data. Try to observe them, because observations work a lot. And also try to just go for natural conversations. Sometimes what happens, you're asking the speaker that how do you say this in this language, and they're so conscious that they might come up with the wrong data. So this is what happened with me also. Sometimes I ask them questions and they get so conscious, they get so nervous, or at times they are agitated also. So you need to sit with them, you need to have some bond with them, and in the course of time you can come up with the real data. So I think it takes little patience. So don't worry if you don't have a background. in this area. But I think time teaches you, experience teaches you. You need to, have a lot of exposure. Okay, so that will help you a lot. Yeah.
Do you have any recording from this field work? Like you didn't play any recording, you
I
sang?
was, yeah, I think uh, today I was just thinking that I should have inserted some audio files. I had some audio files, but I think I will, I don't have it right now to play. But yes, I am still thinking that I will be uploading some of these files soon, maybe on YouTube or something. So in that way, I'll share the link with you in future, and let me come up with some more work so that I can share more.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just thinking on this point that I could have included some audio files, but then good you reminded me. So I will try to do that in future, because I have certain things in my mind. I really want to document the data, with some transcripts and some annotations. So things are working. Yeah.
Right. So is there any question, or we can wrap it up? Okay, so we had a good deal of conversations. I saw so many questions coming up. I'm very happy to invite Professor Devina, and we will ask you to join again to some of our sessions, and then enrich us with your fieldwork experience.
Sure.
Um, so thank you, Professor Devina, and I thank all the participants for joining us and then raising so beautiful questions.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. I think everybody, most of you have really raised good questions. So that made it really, really engaging. And I look forward to more collaborations and more such interactions in future. And I'll share my more experiences with you, especially the field work and the research experiences. Thank you so much, Spandita. Thank you, everybody, for having me here. Bye-bye. Good night.